when heat decided who survived winter. Long before electric heaters, thermostats, or even reliable iron stoves, winter was not a season. It was a trial. Cold killed quietly, through exhaustion, infection, and exposure, long before hunger ever did. Entire families, soldiers on campaign, and isolated homesteaders understood one brutal truth. If you could not manage heat, nothing else mattered. In that world, survival depended on solutions that were small, efficient, and dependable. One of the most overlooked of these solutions was the clay pot heater. Simple, silent, and shockingly effective, it kept people alive when fuel was scarce and shelter was weak. This was not a comfort device. It was a survival tool built on physics, not convenience. Before we go any further, if you value forgotten survival knowledge, battlefield history, and techniques that actually worked when lives depended on them, take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to Warfront Survival, share it with someone who appreciates real history, and drop a comment below. This channel exists to preserve lessons paid for in hardship and blood, and your support keeps that knowledge alive. Now, let's get straight into the method that quietly saved countless lives. Why did ancient people trust clay over fire? Well, the power of the clay pot heater really comes down to something called thermal mass, a concept those early folks understood long before anyone ever gave it a scientific name. Clay absorbs heat slowly, stores it efficiently, and then, releases it steadily over time. Unlike open flames that burn hot and waste energy, clay actually captures heat and turns it into a long-lasting source of warmth. Soldiers, artisans, and families learned that a short, controlled burn could, quite surprisingly, provide hours of usable heat. This meant less fuel, less smoke, and honestly far less risk than keeping an open fire going indoors. Clay also behaved differently than metal. Metal heats up quickly, but, it cools just as fast. Clay, on the other hand, heats slowly and stays warm long after the flame fades. That delay is what made the clay pot heater so valuable. It transformed brief energy into extended warmth, which really mattered when fuel was rationed or, had to be scavenged. How a small flame warmed entire rooms. At its most basic, the clay pot heater required only 3 things: a small heat source, a raised stand, and a thick clay pot. The flame, often a candle, oil lamp, or charcoal ember, sat safely beneath the pot. As hot air rose, it heated the inside of the clay. The pot absorbed that energy and began radiating heat outward in all directions. What emerged was not intense heat, but, consistent warmth that filled the space instead of concentrating in one spot. Historical accounts from Europe and the Middle East describe workshops, barracks and homes kept functional through freezing nights with nothing more than this setup. One candle could maintain a livable temperature in a small room for hours. That efficiency is something even modern heaters struggle to replicate without constant power input. Layered designs, really multiplied efficiency. Resourceful households kept refining the design even further. Nesting pots became common. There'd be a smaller inner pot housing the flame, while a larger outer pot acted as the main heat reservoir. The space between them, well, it was often filled with sand, ash, or even fine gravel. This buffer, right? It stabilized the temperature, protected the clay from cracking, and actually extended heat release for even longer. Some designs, interestingly, included carefully placed ventilation holes to ensure clean combustion, while others suspended the inner pot with metal rods, preventing any direct contact. These, of course, were not just random variations. They were deliberate adaptations, born from generations of trial and error. Every improvement, really, focused on the same goal: more heat from less fuel. Why did this heater warm better than open fires? Well, the clay pot heater worked because it combined both radiant and convective heat. Radiant heat warmed nearby objects' walls and floors directly, while gentle convection circulated warm air throughout the space. Furniture and masonry absorbed that heat and continued releasing it even after the flame died down. This created stability, something open fires just could not provide. An open flame produces uneven heat, intense in one place and honestly absent everywhere else. The clay pot heater spread warmth evenly, making it ideal for small shelters, cabins, and workspaces. It was quiet, smokeless when used correctly, and required almost no attention once heated. So, how did this method cross cultures and centuries? This was not a single invention tied to one place. Versions of the clay pot heater appeared across medieval Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia. Fuel varied depending on the region. Candles, charcoal, animal fat, and wood embers all powered the same basic design. What really mattered was not the fuel, but how efficiently its heat was captured. The consistency of this method across cultures tells us something important. It worked. It endured because it solved a universal problem with minimal resources. So, how can we apply this knowledge today in a responsible way? Well, modern materials actually make this technique easier to replicate, but safety really does matter. Thick terracotta or fire-resistant ceramic is absolutely essential. The heat source must always sit on a stable, non-flammable stand. And, ventilation is critical, especially when you're using charcoal or fat-based fuels. This is not a sealed system, and it should never, ever be left unattended. When used correctly, the clay pot heater remains a powerful tool for off-grid living emergency preparedness and heating small workspaces. It's portable, affordable, and grounded in proven principles, rather than, modern marketing gimmicks. So, why does the clay pot heater still matter? The real lesson here isn't just about the object itself, but the mindset behind it. Ancient people survived because they truly understood materials, energy, and efficiency. They observed, adapted, and refined their methods. The clay pot heater honestly represents that kind of thinking at its very best. Simple design, minimal waste, and maximum return. If you want more forgotten survival techniques, battlefield-tested knowledge, and historical solutions that, still hold up today, subscribe to Warfront Survival, share this video with someone who values real history, and help keep these lessons alive. Cold still kills. Knowledge still saves.